I think one of the major things that we need to address in society urgently is the rising acceptance of violence. You know, this is for women and girls, but it's not just for women and girls, because what we're seeing now, I think, is a massive increase in the acceptance and social desirability of violence, abuse of each other, bullying, stalking. Like, you started this conversation talking about like dogpiling and like everything on the internet, online abuse, that kind of thing. Women's traumas are generally connected to some form of abuse, oppression, harm, misogyny, the way that they've been treated. It's not organic. It doesn't come out of nowhere. They don't just wake up one day and they're traumatized. Somebody has done something to them. But that is the same for men and boys as well. That their trauma and their experiences, it's not magical. It doesn't come out of nowhere. Governments have a huge role to play in addressing systemic violence and also individual violence. But we have a pro-violence culture globally and nationally. You know, everything from the sensationalization of murder and war in films and video games, and you know,
we love it.
We do. And that's a conversation that needs to happen. Like, why have we created a society where everybody enjoys violence, loves violence, goes to the cinema, pays money to watch some violence, you know, and then we sit around scratching our heads like, why is there so much violence?
Okay, you just spoke about meditation and how that was successful for you. What does that look like? Let's give advice to somebody that actually maybe has had a similar journey to you, where they've tried therapy, hasn't really worked for them, and now they've heard you say that meditation worked for you, and they want to go down that route, or the spirituality route. What does that look like? How did they start? How did they get into it? What is the right way to do it? What did you do?
Oh, that's such a big question. I've never been interviewed on this ever, so like I don't even know where to start with this. So how did I get into this? So as somebody that was, if you would have met me a few years ago and you would have asked me about spirituality or meditation, I would have been like, don't be ridiculous. Like, genuinely.
Psychologist response.
Just sort of like, that sounds a bit woo-woo to me. And I would have reacted like that 100%. And it just goes to show that we don't realise how closed-minded we can become.
Once we studied psychology or something medical, it literally keeps us in a box, and we forget what else could work, or what worked before we knew this stuff.
So what happened to me was that I did a lecture series around New Zealand and Australia, and I was out there for a few months, and I now go out there every year for a month or two and work and do lectures and stuff. But the first time I was there, I was really privileged to have met lots of different survivors, professionals, activists from Maori community, from Aboriginal communities, and just all sorts of walks of life. And what fascinated me about New Zealand and Australia was that because of the influence of Maori and also of Aboriginal communities, there is still a level of spirituality woven into the fabric of society that you can't get rid of, right? Whereas in the UK, we've completely abolished it.
We've diluted that.
So as an example, I was at my first workshop, and there's often like rituals or processes, ceremonies before you even begin training over there. Like, you know, there'll be something in particular. They're different, obviously, in both countries, right? But what I found fascinating, especially my first time when I was teaching in New Zealand, which would have been 2019, and then again in 2022, 2023, was that it's completely normal, completely accepted, and actually in a way expected of you, that if you're in a group environment, like for example, if me and you had gone to a conference or training, you stand up, you introduce yourself, you explain who you are, you explain where your family is from, where your nearest river is, where your nearest mountain is, and sort of like what your background is, right? Everybody does that. It's not, it doesn't matter what background you're from, you're supposed to respect that tradition, right? And it was just interesting things like that where I was like, we've lost so much here. And, you know, so anyway, spent a lot of time over there, listened to a lot of people, talked to a lot of people. And what was so obvious was that the conversations in both Australia and New Zealand would be people would just openly talk about, so I had this dream and the dream told me da-da-da-da. And I'd be like, in the UK, people would just stare at you like there's something wrong with you, right?
Yeah.
And then, or people would say something like, I had a vision and the vision made me think about this.
Yeah.
And people are saying this in open conferences, lectures, they're saying it in training environments, saying it in professional environments. And I'm sat there starting to think, oh, we're soulless. Like we are soulless in the UK. Like what has happened to us, right? Yeah. You can't say these things out loud because of the judgment and that kind of thing. Anyway, so when I was in Australia, I was really, really struggling. In 2023, I had been a victim of stalking for about 18 months at that point. The person had just been to court and been put under a stalking order. But for 18 months, my life had been upside down. And I have been through a lot of things in my life, but stalking messed with me in a way that I was not prepared for. And I didn't have the coping mechanisms for stalking. Not suggesting I should have had them. It's not really an experience you're supposed to know what to do with. But whilst I was in Australia, I was probably at the lowest I'd been in my whole life. And I was, I was out there doing something amazing, doing this lecture tour, and I was with my wife and we're having this like amazing time. But then like I was just so burnt out and traumatized. Police investigation been going on for ages. It was just awful. And somebody said to me, after I'd given this series of lectures, we really want to take you for this like gift. It's this sound healing ritual that we want to take you to. I was a bit like, what the hell is that? I was like, I've never heard of anything like that in my life. Went along, totally skeptical, turned up and, went into this beautiful room that had all been set up for this like ritual healing. And I was so intimidated. I was just like, I have no idea what this is or how this is going to go. Didn't really expect anything. Lay down, got settled, just sort of decided I would just surrender to it. And had the wildest out-of-body experience. And to that point, I would have said to you, out-of-body experience does not exist. That's in your head, right?
Yeah.
And the way that experience challenged everything I've been taught.
Yeah.
Things that I experienced and things that I saw and heard, the physical sensations, everything about it left me with so many questions. We drove home afterwards and I was just silent because I just felt like
you have to reprocess everything that you've been taught and the way you view things and what's right and what's wrong and stuff like that. Yeah.
It was like, there are things that I experienced during just that session that I have been told are not real. And I have been told are not possible. And that they are either our imagination, a form of delusion,
hallucination,
psychosis. Right. So then this brings me full circle, and then I'm back to like, hang on a minute, we're back to pathologization. Have we pathologized spirituality? And then I got to the point where I was like, yes, we've got to the point where anything outside of psychiatry is seen as delusion and psychosis, which means spirituality, because of colonialism, because of the impact of the British Empire, the church, anything that seems in any way spiritual or something to do with the soul or something bigger than us, it becomes pathologized as a set of delusional beliefs and, something that you just want to believe happened because it makes you feel better or whatever it is, right? So from there, did loads of sound baths, started training in it at home just privately because I wanted to learn how to do it for myself. And also,
what are sound baths?
So they can be different things, but I use quartz bowls. So I have a set of quartz bowls. Each bowl produces a different note, a different frequency, a different tone. But I also use a large set of drums. So the drumming, as we drum, it can slow down your heart rate, slow down sort of all your nervous system, and just like drop blood pressure because of the way that, our bodies respond to things. Like essentially everything is vibration. So if you're close enough to these tones, the vibration impacts your body, your mind, the tissues, the liquids in your body. In the same way that the vibrations and the technology in sound waves is used in ultrasound, like we can produce images using just sound waves. They're totally harmless. You can have ultrasounds, there's no radiation there. We're not going to get ill, in the same way that we would with an X-ray. the bowls act in the same way. They're producing really strong vibrations and frequencies, and then they're passing through our body, which can do lots of things, can relax us, can put us into a trance state, can help our nervous system to slow down, that kind of thing. I also use a gong. I have a really large gong in my sound bath studio, but that's the same thing. It just produces the vibrations in the air.
Yeah.
And, you know, if your body is close enough to these instruments, you can literally feel, like when I'm playing them, my whole arm and the side of my body, wherever it is, I can feel the movement of the air, you know, in the same way that, I don't know, you go to a club, you stand close enough to a speaker with the bass on, and it's going through your chest. Like, it's the same thing. So yeah, you lie down, you know, and you get comfy, usually cuddle yourself up, blankets, pillows, that kind of thing. I use essential oils, so you also breathe in oils just before you go into trance state. I usually drum somebody like into that state. I usually use like a guided visualization, help them to like visualize and relax and get them to where they want to be. And then I'll use the bowls for like 45 minutes, 50 minutes or so. And people have amazing experiences. I've got a few people that come every single week, and they were extremely traumatized at the beginning. And honestly, I've not asked them what happened to them because I don't need to. What I love about sound baths is that there's no need to disclose. And I'm fascinated by that. I think as my career goes on, I will invest in this more. I'm fascinated by how can lying down on a mat and cuddling yourself up and just basically listening to sounds for an hour a week bring somebody on faster than therapy. Like, what's going on there? Is it placebo or is it not? Is it the impact of the bowls on the nervous system? You know, the research around the impact of sound is pretty... It's taking off, like, in a lot of different countries at the moment. And you know, there are medical doctors in the US especially that are looking at what happens when you use sound healing after major operations and like during cancer treatments and that kind of thing, and like why they get such great outcomes when people meditate, or when they use sound baths, or when they use earthing and grounding, which is like being barefoot, making sure your body's making contact with the earth, and just sort of like, I suppose, releasing all of that extra energy back into the earth that we carry around all the time from electrical devices, stress, that kind of thing. There's so much interesting research that I don't think we're paying that much attention to. And that is because it brings us back to like our conversation. It's this obsession with this sort of medical concept of mental health. Like, it's a disorder, it's in your mind, you have a brain chemical imbalance, you have a genetic predisposition to it. There's something wrong with you. If you just take these pills every day, it'll regulate you, or it'll keep you at, you know, some sort of level, you know, so you can just function in the world. And I don't want that for people. I don't want them to just be like, I can just about function now I take these tablets. I just think we could be doing a lot more than that.
How do you even balance that? It's so refreshing, by the way, to hear a psychologist actually speak about like all of the spiritual stuff that actually normally gets left out of those conversations. But how do you balance that with everything that you've learned? And I guess still being in spaces where, again, you could say all of that to somebody and they would still look at you thinking, actually, what are you talking about, sort of thing? How do you balance that? And do you still subscribe to psychology as much as you did before? Now you've learned all of this other stuff, or you've had these other experiences.
So the first thing is you have to just get brave. So I've realized that I've already been through a lot of experiences, I suppose, as a psychologist. You know, I'm young, I'm a woman, I'm working class. You know, I come from a really poor background. I was a teenage mom, you know, before I went off and like went to university and stuff. Like, I'm not like I'm not the typical academic. I'm not a typical psychologist. I'm not typical anything really. So like, I've had to learn to swim against the current, like, all the time anyway. So with, I suppose, this evolution of even my own thinking around spirituality and how, you know, how we've ignored that, and we, you know, that we've ridiculed it. We've not just ignored it, we've like totally ridiculed it. Absolutely, there'll be people that watch this and just think, oh my God, she's lost it. Like, and I don't care. Like, I've been talking about pathologization now for 6-7 years. I get the same response to that. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She's an idiot. She's, you know, she's making it up. She's a fraud, all the rest of it. You know, that I don't know, like, I've had like people say that I shouldn't be allowed to talk in this way as a psychologist because because I'm so critical of the medical model, and that I should have to say that people should take their pills and that you should go to your doctor and that kind of thing. But I don't have to say that. Like, I'm not bound by being an academic. Just because I have a PhD doesn't mean that I have to toe the line. Like, I have a mind, and I thought the point of us being academics, I thought the point of us having these PhDs that we love so much is about critical thinking. I thought we were supposed to be...
new ways of thinking. Yeah, exactly. That's how psychology used to be, I felt like, before our time. That's how it seemed like it used to be back in the day, where people like Freud or Jung would come up with such extreme theories. And then, people would, sometimes they would get shunted for them, but sometimes people would embrace them or at least hear them out. And I feel like, we've lost that so much. So,
I would love to see that come back. I agree with you completely. Over, when was it, like April, May, I was reading Jung's autobiographies and some of his books, and like I was reading them and I was thinking, we have lost that. Like, I'm not saying that I agree with everything Jung said. I don't agree with everything Freud said. I don't agree with anything anybody said, frankly. Like, everybody, there are ideas that certain people have that I'm like, that's an interesting idea. But then I could read something else and think, I don't agree with that. But it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
We're supposed to be feeling our way through this stuff and evolving as thinkers. So, that's the first answer to that question, is like, I just don't care. Like, I think that one day, I hope that when I'm old, or like when I've gone, people will look back at my career.
They'll go back to your work and be like, actually, this person opened us up to something that we are taking seriously now, which is that's the way of the world, to be honest.
Or at least look back on my stuff and think, she wasn't frightened to explore anything.
Any new ideas,
there was a time in my past where I used to teach about mental health and antidepressants and going to your doctor and symptoms of mental disorders. I would not do that now if someone paid me 10 million quid, not a chance, right? So so I've moved on from that. But then I'm moving into this more like, hang on a minute, what about spirituality? Where has that gone? And what about people's beliefs? And what about the power of the mind? What about placebo and nocebo effect? If we accept that in medical trials, the placebo effect can totally change the outcome of a study, why are we not using the placebo effect? Why are we not using the nocebo effect? If we know that if we tell people, you will get an adverse reaction from this thing, and then give them like a sugar pill, and then they get those adverse reactions, that means the mind created its own suffering. Exactly. Why aren't we using that? There's things that fascinate me that we should be exploring. And I've got to the point, I suppose, where I've just decided, I'm just going to do it myself. And then I suppose we started, then you asked about, what did you ask me about spirituality at the end of that too?
I said, how do you balance it? I guess, how do you balance it?
And you asked me, have I like almost stopped subscribing to certain things from psychology as I've moved? Yes, there are certain things, but it's not necessarily been around the spirituality stuff. It's just been around practice experience. I just don't agree with like attachment theory. I think that I think we're obsessed with it, and I just think that's another example of these seductive, oversimplified concepts that we just become obsessed with. ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. I feel the same way about that. I feel the same way about personality, psychometrics, that kind of thing. The way that we're I think psychology has done itself a disservice over the years, because if you look at the history of psychology, we were obsessed with becoming one of the major sciences. We were like, we're not chemistry, we're not biology, we're not
we
physics.
We need to be taken seriously.
Like, how do we get taken seriously? I know we become more and more empirical, and we create tools and questionnaires, and then we become an empirical science, and we want to be an empirical science. And I feel like, honestly, that's where we lost our way. Because psychology is supposed to be the study of the soul, the psyche. It's supposed to be the study of
it's the study humanity. Of something that you can't see. You're never going to be able to see it. We're never going to be able to change that. You can say the mind is the brain, but we know that it isn't just that. So why are we trying to make it one of these other sciences?
I think we've made a big mistake there, and I think that I hope if society lives long enough to not nuke itself into oblivion, I would very much like us to get to the point where we look back and think, wow, that was a weird part in our history where we wouldn't explore these experiences that humans have on a day-to-day basis. Like one good example of that is dreams. I remember when I was doing my PhD, I spoke to a professor and I was like, I would love one day to do an entire set of studies on dreams. And he said to me, take my advice, do it under a pen name. And I was like, why? And he was like, because you'll ruin your career. And I was like, why would I ruin my career? And he was like, because it's like woo-woo, it's stupid, it's ridiculous. Nobody with a serious career in psychology or forensic psychology is going to focus on dreams and the meaning of dreams. He was like, it's stupid, it's a waste, right? And he wasn't being mean to me. He was trying to almost like give me advice, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, it put me off enough because I was like, oh, okay. And, focus. I went off and did all this like psychology of victims and of abuse and trauma and that kind of thing. However, I come back around to this now, sort of years later. I've got more confidence. I'm, more established. I've got a lot more control over my career. Where I'm sort of like, hang on a minute. So millions and millions, billions of people dream.
Everyone,
Yeah, right. We have had ancient civilizations talk about dreaming, write out their dreams, they paint their dreams, right? Yep. Huge decisions about the world have been made just based on visions and dreams. Monarchs, visions, dreams. World leaders, visions, dreams, like ancient civilizations. And then we've got to this point in history where we're like, dreams are just stupid. They don't mean anything.
We're not going to touch that over there,
And further than that, we say it's just the processing of your unconscious mind while you're asleep. It's just all your memories getting jumbled up together. Nothing means anything. Don't pay attention to them. That's so weird. Why would we have evolved to do something that's meaningless? That makes no sense whatsoever. From an evolutionary perspective, psychological perspective, from a spiritual perspective. Why would everybody have the capability to dream and see things and to receive messages or to process a problem or to see a problem before it occurs or to worry about something and be able to see it in your mind? Why would we be able to do that if it was just some useless byproduct of consciousness? It just makes no sense to me. And I think that that's an example of where we've just lost the soul out of psychology, like how we abandoned those topics and relegated them to like, just almost like, oh, it's just what the brain does when you're asleep. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. And I feel like actually we got there with dreams. It speaks to what you said, that actually there's no objective way to study dreams. It's going to have to be theory based. It's going to have to be actually somebody saying something and somebody having a theory and no real solid way to prove that theory. And I think that's what scared us away from it. But I'm fascinated by dreams as well, to be honest. Okay, before we finish up, I cannot have those books on the table and not ask you about each of them. So quickly explain to me, what is Underclass?
Underclass is my memoir. It is a dark, like gritty comedy about growing up in Stoke and then becoming a psychologist and the discrimination that I faced when some professors found out that I was a teenage mom. They tried to get me kicked off my PhD and said that I wasn't good enough, essentially, and that I would bring all this baggage and problems to psychology and that I shouldn't be allowed to complete. So the book like follows like my story of trying to figure out like why on earth that was happening to me. So I got talked into writing that memoir by my publishers. But I love writing comedy. I've written some stuff for TV and I've written some other bits, and I love being able to write in my like true natural way of communicating, which is like dark, sort of tongue-in-cheek, pushing things a little bit. Really love that. So that's fun. That's, I really enjoyed writing that, and I'm definitely going to be writing more. Sexy But Psycho, I think, is the other one that's there. And Sexy But Psycho is more of like a non-fiction, like as in it looks at why we use psychiatric labels against women and girls who come forward who have been traumatized and abused. It looks at the sexualization of psychiatric labeling as well, of like where that's sort of like sexy but psycho, almost like bunny boiler, like the almost the sort of like the crazier they are, the better they are in bed, that kind of thing. So it like looks at that. That was my first big like bestseller before Underclass and stuff, and like I think, and I said in an interview at the time when it came out, I think that book will be like a book that is like my legacy, like someone wrote about that. Why Women Are Blamed for Everything is the first thing that I wrote straight out of my PhD and instantly became a bestseller, which was an absolute shock because I self-published it and I purchased 50 copies and it sold 10,000 in a few weeks. And then I was completely overwhelmed and my house looked like Amazon warehouse. It was ridiculous. But Why Women Are Blamed for Everything looks at the psychology of victim blaming of women and girls and the psychology of self-blame.
Okay.
And it looks at like all my PhD work. And then obviously ITIM is there too, which we talked about.
Yeah.
And then I've written loads of other things, but I can't bring them all.
You can't bring all of them. Yeah,
No.
You have a massive rucksack sort of thing. Okay. Do you feel like men and women's experience of trauma is different? And what would you say that difference is?
I think that it is different, but that's because everybody's experience of trauma is different. So like men's role in the world is different to women's role in the world, whether we like that or not, whether we subscribe to it or agree to it. It does mean that, you know, when women are subjected to some form of abuse or trauma, their experience of that and the impact that it will have on them is different to what it would have on a guy, right? Same with boys and girls in childhood. I worked in male mental health for years and I set up the UK's first male mental health centre when I was in my 20s, and that was after a family member died, a guy, and that was, you know, I spent several years just working in male mental health, and some of the conversations and some of the experiences I had with men around their trauma and around everything they had been through and the way that they process it, the way they talk about it is different from women and girls.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think one is worse than the other. I think that the way that we're all socialized from birth then shapes the way that we explain ourselves and also the way that we feel that we can act. So as an example, you'll get men saying things like, I don't feel like I can cry, I don't feel like I can show weakness, whereas women don't necessarily have that, but what they do have is I can't show anger, I can't show resentment, I can't show rage or violence, whereas men and boys have been socialized from birth that their rage, their anger, their violence is normal and it's justified. When women do that, it's the worst thing they've ever done. So everybody, I suppose, they have their own unique challenges. Okay. All right, I'm going to ask you two major questions. Actually, first, before I ask you the two major questions, is there anything that you want to promote? You've already spoken about a lot. You've got your books on the table. I would advise everybody to go out and buy them and read them. Is there anything else you're doing at the moment that you want to promote or speak to, or social media? Absolutely anything for the audience. That's a lot, isn't it? I have no idea. You can come and follow me and come and have a chat. I'm at Dr Jess Taylor on everything. Okay. And my social media is a big, massive mix of really interesting psychology stuff and also some pictures of sometimes when I go out somewhere nice and also me commenting on the news and also me just like speaking to camera. Like it's just I sort of just built it to be almost like a diary. It's just everything.
And I love that because that's how it was supposed to be before we were told it needs to be structured in a certain way.
I hate that. But also I'm not disciplined enough. You know, the whole like you need to post this many times a week at this time, and I'm like, mate, have you met me? That's not gonna happen. But yeah, you come and like look on social media, you know, on my socials and stuff, and I do a lot of mentoring and coaching, and Amethyst program is really successful and stuff. But you are more than welcome to just come and chat to me after this podcast. Yeah.
Well, you are very approachable. Okay, my first question. These are quite weighty ones. These are major ones. It's what you do a lot of work on women and women's health and trauma and stuff. What is the one thing you think needs to be changed in society to improve, I guess, the mental well-being of women specifically? What's the one thing society can do? Something that's real, something that actually can happen, not something that's actually this is going to happen in 100 years or we need to work to this. What's something real that we can do in society to improve the well-being or the healing of women?
The first, I don't know if this is a bit of a cop-out of an answer, but I don't think it is. I think that the argument will be that will take too long, Jess, but I actually don't think it will.
Okay.
Which is, I think we need to deal with misogyny and violence against women and girls because it is endemic. It's literally constant, you know. And I do think that that's possible. Like I was recently asked to write the recommendations to government of, to the current Labour government of like what could be,
What
what practical
what
things
we actually do.
could be implemented now to deal with this. And it was huge. Like the list that I gave them was like, change this, do away with this, change that, you know. I think one of the major things that we need to address in society urgently is the rising acceptance of violence. You know, this is for women and girls, but it's not just for women and girls, because what we're seeing now, I think, is a massive increase in the acceptance and social desirability of violence, abuse of each other, bullying, stalking. Like you started this conversation talking about like dogpiling and like everything on the internet, online abuse, that kind of thing. Women's traumas are generally connected to some form of abuse, oppression, harm, misogyny, the way that they've been treated. It's not organic. It doesn't come out of nowhere. They don't just wake up one day and they're traumatized. Somebody has done something to them. But that is the same for men and boys as well. That their trauma and their experiences, it's not magical. It doesn't come out of nowhere. Governments have a huge role to play in addressing systemic violence and also individual violence. But we have a pro-violence culture globally and nationally, you know, everything from the sensationalization of murder and war in films and video games, and you know,
we love it.
We do. And that's a conversation that needs to happen. Like, why have we created a society where everybody enjoys violence, loves violence, goes to the cinema, pays money to watch some violence, you know, and then we sit around scratching our heads like, why is there so much violence?
When it happens in real life, we're like, actually, when we've shown that we're kind of fascinated with it. I actually saw a tweet this morning where it said, it was two tweets. The first tweet said that it was basically a tweet of Netflix making another documentary about a iconic serial killer. And then somebody else said, why do Netflix keep making these kind of documentaries? And then the response to that was, because those are the best documentaries that they make in terms of viewership. Those are the ones that get the most views. Those are the ones that spark the most conversations, because we have an obsession. That's right. With those kind of people, basically, and the things that they do.
I work with a lot of production companies that work with Netflix, and I've done some stuff for Netflix as well. And they're, in terms of their commissioning streams, that kind of product, that kind of doc series, you know, about serial killers and that kind of thing, is one of their biggest earners. You know, it gets the biggest streams. It will usually trend, you know, number one, number two for weeks and weeks and weeks when they get released. Netflix does know that.
Everybody's talking about it,
But you know what's interesting about that is, in the same way that we blame the media for everything, and I used to do that years ago. I was like, the media is the problem. No. The media reflects the consumption of the population. Right? That's all Netflix are doing.
They're only looking at the numbers. They're saying that actually, no matter what you're saying overtly, you like this because that's what people are watching. That's what's getting the numbers. So you like this. So why wouldn't we continue to give you what you like, basically? I totally agree.
It's so easy for us to be like, it's the media's fault, it's Netflix's fault. It's like, you're consuming it in your millions. So if you don't like it and you don't want it, don't watch it. You know, but the fact of the matter is, you love it, and you know, you're sort of, I get it all the time. People contact me and they say like, oh, I love true crime. It's my favourite thing. I love watching serial killer stuff. I don't know why, I just love it. And I'm like, because I don't. I don't watch any of it, and I hate all of it. And I just can't, that's not, if I'm going to relax, I'm watching Family Guy. Do you know what I mean?
You don't want to watch the darkest stuff before you go to bed. And it will do something. I feel like it will do something to you at a subconscious level. It makes you like, I think we are calling these people villains, but actually I feel like these villains, especially in these documentaries, they become loved. And
they become sensationalized. I like that you said loved, though, because I think you're right. Like, Ted Bundy is a really good example of that. Where he got sexualized, and also he became romanticized. You know, and so we see that quite a bit, where that sexualization and almost the sensationalization of very, very serious crime occurs, and then you end up with like a fan base of people for that particular person. It's wild.
Okay, that's a very good answer to the first question. Okay, my last question before we finish up is, I ask all my guests this question. It's, if I was to give you a megaphone, I gave you a megaphone and you could speak to everybody in society, and you could teach them one psychological insight that has helped you, what would that be?
That has helped me?
Something that has helped you, that you actually feel like if everybody heard this might help a bunch of people. What would that be?
I laughed when you said it because I knew straight away. If somebody gave me a megaphone, I could and everybody in society could hear that, I would tell them that their feelings, their emotions, their responses to traumatic and distressing experiences are completely natural and normal, and no pill will make them feel better, and that it is okay to feel their feelings, and it can be scary, but it's natural. And so we have to validate those natural experiences. That changed my life as well. I used to think when I was younger that I had anxiety disorder, and I used to think I was having anxiety attacks. And, you know, when I was in my early 20s and it clicked, and I was like, no, Jess, you're scared.
You're scared, yeah.
What are you scared of, Jess?
Yeah.
And like once I got to the bottom of that, it went away, because I was like, oh, I'm frightened of these things happening to me.
Yeah.
What do I do about them? So like that would be my message. And in a way, that's what I use my social media to do already, is that I have this huge reach of millions of people. And I keep trying to say to people, you are not ill. Your trauma is not an illness.
Yeah.
Your feelings are not an illness. You don't have a chemical imbalance in your brain. Nobody has ever proven that to you. You've never taken a test.
Yeah.
You aren't disordered. You're not mentally ill. Your feelings are real, and you need to pay attention to them, because pushing them down isn't going to work. It's going to come out one way or another. So that's the message that I already give. That's what I would do if I had some sort of world stage.
Yeah.
I think a lot can be achieved in humanity by getting us back to validating our real feelings and not convincing each other that we're mentally ill.
Yeah. Okay. Very, very powerful answer. Well, thank you so much. I just wanted to say I invited you on here because of your social media and because of what I've seen you do. And yeah, I think we already kind of spoke to it, your bravery and just putting your theories out there, despite what backlash that you might get in this day and age. You're actually being an actual psychologist. And I feel like when I learned about psychology in college, it was all about these people having really extreme theories, putting them out into the world. Some were accepted, some were tweaked, but yeah, that was what it was about. It was about advancing knowledge in the world. So yeah, thank you so much. This has been an absolutely amazing conversation. I think I got so much from it. I think other people are going to get so much from it. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for coming down to Cambridge and having this conversation with me.
Thank you. I really appreciate you asking me. So